Welcome to the Tim Ahlman Podcast. Pray the joy of Jesus is with you today as you're buckled up ready for a conversation filled with joy and love and hope as I get to learn with a new sister in Christ that had been referred to me. She is an author and a professor. Her name is Rachel Ferguson. She's the author of Black Liberation Through the Marketplace, Hope, Heartbreak, and the Promise of America. She is also the director of the Free Enterprise Center at Concordia University Chicago, assistant dean of the College of Business, and professor of business ethics. She's an affiliate scholar of the Action Institute and co-author of the book I just read. She co-authored with Marcus Witcher. Her commentary has been featured on National Review, the Dispatch, the Christian Post, Religion and Liberty, Profectus, which I've not heard of, and Law and Liberty and others. She's been at Lindenwood University before coming to Concordia, Chicago, and she served there at Lindenwood for about 16 years. She also, if you're in the St. Louis area, is married to a conservative talk show host. It's been around Missouri for a number of years. His name is Michael Ferguson, and she has two children, 19 and 20. So, Rachel, what a joy to be with you today. You loving life, man? What's giving you a lot of joy right now? Thanks for hanging with me.
Oh, thank you for having me. What a great question. I have a really wonderful group of believers that I've been meeting with for sort of spiritual practices.
Love it.
To work on doing those together. We're talking about things like practicing Sabbath and so forth. Obviously not to earn anything from God, right? But simply to make space in our lives to be closer to him. So that's bringing me an incredible amount of joy.
Wow. Well, now I'm curious about that. So is it a group of women, men, small group? And are you looking at any kind of textbook of sorts? Are you, what's the, because there's so many spiritual practices, and we'll just hang here to start. You talk Sabbath. I'm just about ready to head on a sabbatical for 10 weeks. I'm excited about that. But what are some of those practices, spiritual practices, that are just making Jesus and your faith come more alive for you, Rachel?
Yeah, so this is actually a group of families. So there are even
cool.
kids there, and my boys are with me. My 19 and 20-year-old sons
So good.
are really interested in it as well. It's just a small group of about 12 people. And we're just at the very, very beginning of maybe using some resources from John Mark Comer, his
Sure.
Practicing the Way.
Mm-hmm.
And I've actually been very influenced by probably sort of the grandfather of the movement, Dallas Willard.
Oh, for sure.
And his book, The Divine Conspiracy, was pretty life-changing for me. And so, so I've tried, one of the tough things for me is that, you read a book like The Divine Conspiracy, you do a lot of those things. It made really changed me from the inside out. It made a huge difference for me. But I was kind of doing it by myself.
Uh-huh.
And we're not really made for that. We're made to do spiritual practices in community. And so I kind of fell off the wagon, with a lot of really good things that I had put in my life. But there were also things I hadn't really tried because nobody in my community was doing it, like fasting. And so just in the last couple of months, I've done 2 3-day fasts.
Come on.
Which has been amazing. It's amazing how your mind clears by day 3. It's like, wow, there's something both biologically and spiritually occurring there at the same time. They work together. We are bodies, right? We're not Gnostics. That's important. And then just beginning to talk with a group of Christians, people who've been believers their whole lives, and they're going, how do you practice Sabbath? What does that actually look like? So it's just been great to begin the conversation.
Wow. Okay. So how do you practice Sabbath? What have you been learning about it? Because I think a lot of people are just running through the rat race of life and not able to shut it off. You're always connected. For me, heading on my sabbatical, I'm turning off email, obviously social media. I'm getting rid of my phone, my smartphone, going to have a dumb phone for a while. And so those are some of the rhythms. I think a lot of those ended up getting incorporated into your Sabbath day. You turn off a lot of those things so you can turn on to the Word of God and turn on to being present with the people who are around you. So what does practicing Sabbath look like for you, Rachel?
I mean, you hit a lot of the high points. And really, I'm just beginning to experiment with that. I think part of the conversation we were having as a group is that it really can look different depending on your phase of life that you're in, whether you've got little kids in the house, what sort of work you do, right? And so it can take time to actually figure out what rhythm makes sense. For me, I think getting off the phone is just huge. We have Cal is it Newport? I'm trying to
Newport.
remember the,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
yeah,
mm-hmm.
Cal Newport has a lot of work on how really distracting the phones are in terms of it taking like 20 to 23 minutes just to get back into any kind of deep work you're
Deep
doing.
work. Yeah.
If you go to check your phone, it's like, oh my gosh, how much harder are we making our lives, and how much more stressed out are we than we need to be because of our phones? And I'm on my phone a lot, and so that's a really, really important one that I'm looking forward to. But then also just emphasizing that, um, whether or not you need time to yourself versus time with community, right? Those sorts of questions. And so much of that can depend on what's going on in your life or what your particular personality is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So good. Well, now I have to ask about fasting. Just quickly, how do you do a 3-day fast, Rachel?
So number one, electrolytes.
Please.
Okay?
Thank you.
They
Yeah.
they absolutely save my bacon. So I just do a water fast, or you can have coffee, black coffee. But there's these great electrolytes called LMNT, like element, LMNT, and you can get all different flavors. But the point is just that you do have those salts, you do have that helping you, helping your system to function well. And as long as you do that, you'll really be fine.
Yeah.
The body is made for fasting. It's a great detox. People have done it all through human history.
That's right.
It's a very common practice. So no need to panic, right? Just make sure you have enough water and enough electrolytes.
And I would say, to add on to that, if 3 days sounds too intense, do an intermittent fast where you narrow your eating window. And maybe this is how you kind of stack up to it, where you eat only between noon and 6. I do intermittent fasting every day, every work day. I allow myself, if I need to eat breakfast, then I do on Friday on my day off. Maybe it's a date morning breakfast with my wife or something like that. But normally on a day like this, I've not eaten anything since last night around 6:30. And I find then my green zone in the morning after getting my water and then just one cup of coffee. If I need, most of the time I put MCT oil in it. So that's a little bit of fat. So it's not a true fast, but a little bit of something there that helps sustain. And then you can work toward a full day fast, basically from dinner to dinner. Like I could easily do now, since I do intermittent fasting, day fast doesn't even seem that wild to me as well. And I could extend that green zone if I don't eat, meaning I feel really, really present with people. Is that what you've kind of experienced? And it's meant for a couple of spiritual reasons. One, when you feel the hunger pains, you're drawn toward the hunger for more of Christ, your necessity for more of who God is in your life. But I've found that because when I eat, what happens a lot of times when you eat, you get that kind of that mid-afternoon kind of lull, right?
Yeah.
When your
Especially
stomach,
stuff we eat.
exactly, and eat what God made, right? Not what man made. So yeah, there's a whole bunch there. And on this podcast, I do go down that path a fair amount for folks. But yeah, did you kind of ramp up though into fasting, Rachel, to get to a 3-day? Do you do intermittent, anything like that?
I did 1 days and then led up to the 3. Yes, but that's how I did it. And this may be old news to your listeners, I don't know. But for me, when I read Dallas Willard's discussion of fasting, I was totally blown away. I mean, that was 20 years ago, but I had no idea, when Jesus says, put oil on your head and a joy on your face and so forth, I really thought he meant fake it. Like, isn't that crazy that I thought Jesus was telling us to fake it? But as a young person, I just thought that's what he meant. It never occurred to me that he was saying you will plug into a spiritual reality that is so much more real, right, than the material reality that we tend to live in our consciousness, that you will experience deep joy and gladness in fasting. And even the idea that Jesus was in the strongest possible position he could be in when he was tempted by Satan at the end of the 40 days, as opposed to being what I assumed was the weakest position he would be in because he'd been not eating. Right. As opposed to thinking, but he'd been communing with his father for 40 straight days. He couldn't have been in any better of condition, than he was in order to face the enemy. And so those two things were major paradigm shifts.
Have you, in terms of nutrition, have you gone mostly what God made I eat? Are you trying to get rid of processed food and things like that? That's the Maha movement right now, Make America Healthy Again. I'm watching that with eagerness to I'm not a huge fan of. I appreciate pharmaceuticals, but I think we become overly medicated, and I think food can help us to heal, and some of these spiritual practices can help the body to heal. And there's been so much debate over if you're in the carnivore or I just eat greens,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
I'm a carnivore guy, and when I've tried to go vegan, it's not gone crazy. I need meat. And I think Jesus said something about that to Peter, right? Here it comes. Like you're gonna eat all of these different things. Anyhow, if I can get, most people are protein deficient. They're not
Right.
getting enough protein every single day.
Right.
Do you monitor? So two things for me. I monitor the protein that I'm eating, and I'm starting to monitor the muscle that I'm keeping and gaining. I think we need to change the conversation right now from weight loss to muscle gain. And protein
Oh,
has a
very
huge,
good.
huge aspect because there's a lot on weight and body image, and for men and women. I think a lot of times we look at it for women. Men are right in the same path. Man, I need to get rid of. I got an extra 20, in the midsection and all of that. But I think fasting, getting your water, obviously moving your body, the detox that comes through working out and sweating. We're meant to move. And then I think a carnivore-esque diet, a keto type diet, has a lot of research around it right now that leads toward maximum health. Have you done any
Yeah.
work in terms of what we eat, Rachel?
Yeah, I'm not huge into all of that, probably as much as you are, but I will say this in support of your point. So I had 2 home births. I worked with a
Wow.
midwife back before it was legal in the state of Missouri, and
Cool.
I'm very classical liberal, let me tell you.
Yeah.
But one of the things she did for me was have me really track my protein and
Yeah.
keep it way, way up while I was pregnant. And I experienced, I mean, truly, I felt so good when I was pregnant. I felt amazing. When I got on her regimen, before I was on her regimen, I had morning sickness. Now, I'm not saying that will be that way for every
Right.
single woman. I don't know, but boy, did it work for me.
Hmm.
And I had great experiences, great births, healthy boys. And today, if I'm doing good, I'm cutting out most bread and
Yep.
I'm eating more protein,
There you go.
for sure. So the healthiest I've ever been in my life is the times when except for maybe Ezekiel bread, I really wasn't eating a lot of bread. I was eating more protein.
Good for you. All right. Hey, let's get into leadership, business ethics. Take us to school. So tell us the story of how you became fascinated with kind of business ethics, leadership, Christ, and how that interacts with like Christ in the marketplace. So if you
Yeah.
could give us your general high level summary of when you teach a business ethics course, what are you aiming for the students to learn?
Yeah. So I do teach business ethics in a very unusual way.
Okay.
Most business ethics courses were invented in the 1960s. It was kind of like, oh, we should have ethics in business. So let's hire a philosopher to teach everybody Kant, Mill, and Aristotle, and then try and apply it to business. Well, the
Hmm.
problem with that is that a lot of philosophers don't understand business and they don't understand, frankly, the market economy. And so they came in with a lot of terrible ideas and negative ideas about the market.
Hmm.
And it ended up being basically a discussion of what the government should do to regulate things.
Mhm.
And I apologize for my cat
No,
who's
it's fine.
who's
It's
needing a
a
lot of
sweet cat.
attention.
What's your cat's name? What's your cat's name?
This is Rosie.
Hi, Rosie.
Rosie's all over me. But
It's
anyway,
all good. It's all good. Yeah.
she's a cutie. But yeah, so what I did is I completely revamped the business ethics course to really start out explaining kind of the wonders of the market economy. Because one of the things I want my business students to believe is that their calling is a very high one,
Yes.
that they are able to do amazing things for the world because they are creating amazing products and services, and that they are doing so in a system which is peaceful, orderly, which encourages people to mutually benefit one another without violence or, some of the
Sounds
things
great.
that have typified human history. Right.
Hmm.
And so we just have such in my opinion, a negative attitude towards the market and towards business when really we should be having parades in the street. I mean, we have 136, oh, I'm trying to think what the number is, 1,000 or something, people coming out of abject poverty every single day,
Amazing.
we're living in an era in which abject poverty has dropped to 8% of the entire global population.
Praise
Just
God.
in the last 40 years, that's a drop of like 32 percentage points. It's just stunning. And so if I'm able to say to students, hey, business can do wonderful things in the world, it can really make people's lives so much better. What you're doing is so important. I mean, if you create an amazing antibiotic, Tim, it doesn't make any difference if we can't distribute it.
That's
It
right.
doesn't make any difference if the people are living in a place where their quality of life is so low that they can't afford it, or they can't afford it for their kids, et cetera. So business matters. It really, really matters. So we start out with really understanding the market economy and how it works, the legal infrastructure that's required, the rule of law, et cetera. And then we talk about the actual Aristotelian virtues that you need to develop in order to be a great business person, which is really a matter of character formation.
Is that pretty much all it is and it really, how does that, because a lot of folks are listening maybe in the church, how does the character of Christ interact with the marketplace? Because you're really speaking, I'll put on my Lutheran hat for a second. Luther was all about vocation, and every vocation holy, right? The royal priesthood of all believers, that when the mom takes care of the baby or the trash man takes care of the trash, this is holy work out in the marketplace, in the home, out into the marketplace. Do you base a lot of your character development on the person and work of Jesus? Does that pop up since you're in a Concordia?
Yeah. No, it does. So I kind of merge into that at the end of the course. And
Very cool.
so there's a wonderful set of videos that I would recommend to everyone. Go to Faith & Co. Faith & Co. films. And these are short films that are created about Christian business people who are just really on mission in their business. And it could be that they're doing something that is sort of social entrepreneurship, right? So maybe they have a normal business, but they're hiring disabled people, or they have a normal business, but they're hiring people who are getting a second chance out of prison. Or they're just running a normal business, but they're just bringing their faith really strongly into the way that they conduct themselves, the kinds of relationships they develop with their employees, and so forth. And so I think the way that it might evolve as a Christian business person could start out thinking, okay, well, I should just be hyper efficient in business, and then I can give away as much as I can. And then they evolve right out of that into, okay, yeah, I do want to be efficient in business and give away as much as I can, but also the business itself is the good work that God has given me to do. So I need to do it really, really excellently. And that might involve thinking about the way that I handle my employees and so forth, right? Yeah. And being more thoughtful in that regard. Or it may involve thinking about the actual products that I create, and how I'm making them. And then beginning to realize when the good I do through my business is so effective, it's good to give things away, but it's also good to expand the business, right? Because now you're employing more families, and you're really supporting community in a way that nonprofit work sometimes does. But let's be honest, a lot of nonprofit work is kind of toxic. It can actually undermine people's social relationships, and we can do it in a way that increases dependency instead of self-sufficiency. And so, really expanding your business might be the greatest call, along with supporting non-toxic, we might say, forms of charity.
So good. What are the primary Aristotelian values, character values, that you highlight in your class in the marketplace?
Yeah, sure.
It's going to really help us grow, because this is a leadership podcast, so there's going to be a lot of overlap with what we often share. So looking forward to hearing this.
Okay, great. Yeah. So one of them is, sort of going against there's several stereotypes about our system that I think are just off. So one is, for instance, we call it a competitive system, which is totally true. It works because businesses know that they've got another business coming up right behind them, right, who can do a better job. And so you've got to keep your quality up, keep your creativity up, keep your prices low. That's all great. But when I wake up in the morning, I don't wake up to compete. Competition is a normal byproduct of being in a commercial society. But when we wake up in the morning, what we actually are doing is cooperating, right? Mm-hmm. Most of what I do in the market is me trying to persuade you. I'm trying to persuade you to be my customer. I'm trying to persuade you to come and work for me. I'm trying to persuade you to come and be my distributor, right? It's a lot of persuasion. And we're really trying to figure out cooperative endeavors. What's the contract we can make, right? What's the agreement we can come to? And so understanding that actually, we're always talking about how individualistic America is. And I actually think that's a misnomer. We are not particularly individualistic in the negative sense. We certainly have individual rights, and we certainly believe in the sanctity of the individual as valuable to God all by themselves and not as part of some whole. Okay, I understand that. But Americans are actually famous, and Tocqueville is famously said this, right? We're famous for association. We start clubs, right? We just solve things through association and cooperation. And we are world famous for that. We have more overlapping associations than many societies in the rest of the world even have. And so that's why we have so many lawyers, because we have so many agreements that we're constantly dealing with. And so one point is just that community is actually part of what it is to be in a commercial society, to have a strong sense of community. And when you join a corporation, when you join a company, you do need to ask yourself, is this company, do I share its values? Do I share its culture? Is this a place where I can grow as a person in good conscience or not? Right? As opposed to, I'm just going to take whatever job pays the most. Sometimes business students think that that's how they're supposed to think, but most people don't make their decisions that way. I didn't become a philosophy professor so I could make the most money, right? I became a philosophy professor because that was my giftedness, and that's where I felt called. And so, and I've been rewarded, which is great, but that was just not necessarily in my line of sight, when I was making my decisions. So that community aspect is sort of the first one that we address.
Well, Jesus changed the world, Rachel.
Yes.
Like Jesus crossed every boundary in not a competitive, but a cooperative pursuit to make all things new, right? It's the inbreaking of the kingdom of God. And I think about the early church and how they had to cross into different marketplaces, into different worldviews, and find the commonality to build community in an attempt by the Spirit's power to make a case for Jesus being the hope of the world.
Yeah.
Jesus didn't have to use people. He chose. Because God has always been a God of community, from the triune interactions, the mystery of the interaction of the Trinity, down to the way we interact as humans in churches working together, in clubs working together, in businesses working together. No one business is whole on its own. And then the Apostle Paul, he pings at this metaphor of the body. Where would the hand be without the foot, or the head be without the heart, etc.? We need one another desperately. And I've been making this case for years, Rachel, that our church cannot live autonomous. No one pastor can live autonomous. We desperately need all different types of churches to reach all different types of people. Yeah. And churches have even different gifts. Just like there's a lot of commonality here, just like different businesses have different gifts to offer and receive. There's reciprocity in it. There's mutuality in it. There's respect, honor for one another. We in our church, not just local, but district and national, we could learn something from marketplace leaders who honor and respect the diversity of gifts that come from those who are producing X product. That I couldn't do you just think about, I just got a newer car here recently, right? And all the different pieces and companies that had to come together from tech to steel to bring that car together, and it's spectacular. Innovation is spectacular. I love it. And I think a lot of times here in America, we have been maybe, like you said, anti-individual and also maybe anti-new. Now, I love old things. I think there's a lot to be learned from the classics, etc., right? But that shouldn't be at the expense of saying everything that's created that's new is bad. Like, I like my new car that's going to be more efficient and effective for me. I'm not going to have to take it to the mechanic, for goodness sake, Yeah. So, I think, and our God is a God of new things, new wine, new wineskins. And then on the last day, Revelation 21, behold, I'm making all things new. So I said a lot there just to ping for those that are drawing the kind of marketplace to the church. There's so many commonalities between what we can learn in the marketplace and the church. Any response to my kind of little rant there about how theology, I think, mixes in an appropriate sense with the marketplace?
Yeah, I mean, the one of the first points I make with my students is that the huge explosion in wealth that we've seen over the last 250 years is really the product of innovation. And oftentimes the narrative is that it's the product of exploitation. But exploitation has been existing for the whole of human history, right?
We're pretty good at that, aren't we? We're pretty good at that.
Imperialism and colonialism and slavery for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, and it never created what we've seen in the last 250 years. But what we've seen is a situation in which people are aware that they can actually keep the products of their labor, and so they are incentivized to innovate and to see those innovations through in ways that have become incredibly powerful for their neighbors. Now, for those who struggle with the biblical injunctions against, some of the injunctions against riches or wealth, I think it's really interesting to point out that if you actually do a sort of a verse by verse analysis, what you find is that when wealth is described positively, which it often is in scripture, it is associated with making. So wealth that is described as a reward is productive. Wealth that is condemned is exploitative. It's ascribed to taking. So always make that distinction between making and taking. If I just transfer your wealth to myself, then I'm just a pirate, right? I haven't actually made us richer as a group. I've just made myself richer by taking from you. But if I innovate, I've made you and me richer, right? Because I've made something new. You're going to buy it. So you're going to benefit from it. And I'm going to benefit from selling it. And so assuming it's a good product, that's great all around, right? And so we can see that productivity and creativity. And as Tolkien said, right, God is the creator and we're the sub-creators. So there's something really beautiful happening.
No, that is so good. The Bible, Jesus says an awful lot about money, and that money can become a god, right? But co-creating with God, or sub-creating, that is a better word, is a beautiful invitation. And I think of the love of money, right? A heart that's torn toward money rather than the call of adventure and love and hope and beauty and creativity, that the entrepreneurial spirit. I don't see God. God really loves that, right? But I think often in the church, we're like, against. No. We should. I'm excited about a ministry you have called Kingdom Builders. And it's building reciprocity and love and care and understanding between marketplace leaders whose call it is to produce products, love their customers, love their consumers with the products that they produce, and love making money to advance the cause of Jesus.
Yeah.
And often we have downgraded that. My brother is a marketplace leader, and he's just, the Lord has just blessed him with so many gifts, not just resources, but the character of Jesus shines through him. And when he was an 18-year-old, he was 19 or so, he was considering becoming a pastor like his dad and brother. And then I really believe it was in kind of an internal call. He said, yeah, that's good for you. He was kind of imbalanced on the Frank front. He goes, I think I would make people kind of too mad at me because I'm not as diplomatic. I'm pretty kind of to the point, and he very much is. He says, this was so discerning at 20 years old or so. I think God's calling me to go and make a lot of money and give a lot of money away. Like, how cool is that heart?
Yeah.
That you could bless in this life and in the life to come. Because business leaders have vision, do churches have vision for how those resources are going to be spent? And that marrying between, man, I see this in the marketplace, and Pastor, I see you. We're speaking some similar language that I can now get behind what it is that your EROI, your eternal return on investment, is going to provide. I think there's a lot of work to be done for marketplace leaders and pastors to in reciprocity, mutuality, love and care and respect, listen and learn from one another. Anything to say to that? We got a lot of church leaders that are listening to this. That's why I kind of go down that path a little bit. Rachel, anything more to add to that?
Well, I agree 100%. And I think the thing that I would add is that when it comes to one of my passions, which is poverty alleviation and neighborhood stabilization, what you find is that pastors are often called upon to head up various projects.
Great.
And that's okay, but they're not always the experts when it comes to economic development. My dad was a pastor, and he was a wonderful pastor, and he evangelized, and he was a great guy, but he wasn't a manager. He wasn't good at books. He wasn't any of those things. And so I think we underestimate the contribution of our Christian business people in being leaders in a lot of these missional areas. And pastors are sometimes a little disconnected, actually, from what their businessmen and women are doing. I almost wish they'd go, instead of having lunch at the coffee shop or at the church, I wish the pastor would go over to their work and find out what they do, because oftentimes we're asking people with very high levels of skill to write us checks or be greeters or whatever they might be, or maybe even help in the vestry or whatever it is. But we're not necessarily seeing the role that they have to play in the community if the mission of the church were brought together with their high level business skills. And especially for men, this is just a hobby horse of mine, but I think that, there's a lot of men who sort of go to church with their wives, and whatever. And I just mean maybe not at the LCMS, but in general. And, and I think they're not necessarily recognized for the gifts that God has given them. And they're not necessarily being taught that those gifts are huge in the kingdom of God.
Amen.
They're being taught, come to our building and do things in our building. And that's what will contribute to the kingdom of God. And that's, as Luther's so good on the topic of vocation, that is just not true.
That's
You're
right.
building the kingdom of God in all of your vocations. And so I just wonder if we were able to accomplish some of the things you were just mentioning, if we wouldn't see a kind of revival amongst men.
Yeah.
Really seeing, oh my gosh, the things that I feel so competent in Monday through Friday are actually building God's kingdom, and I can begin to use them for economic development in destabilized areas and things that are really beautiful kingdom building activities that I didn't necessarily make that connection before.
So good. So good. Yeah. If anybody wants to connect with us on the kingdom builder approach, it's not a fundraising only strategy. There are resources connected to it, but what we provide are lane reports for our members, five different lanes of mission. And then they get to say, with their resources and their influence, Pastor, I see this and I would like to fund this lane of mission. It can be next gen campus projects, local, national, international ministry. And then we meet with that group. We provide them these lane reports, which is like a deep dive as a ministry into the vision. And then with their resources, they get to prioritize the speed of that vision getting accomplished. And with 2 different gatherings, kind of gala type gatherings a year, they get to hear and speak in and learn. And we've got a number of business leaders that then get to share how God is at work in their marketplace work. And we call this Kingdom Builder Ministry, it's one of our serve teams, so that the man or woman doesn't have to feel like, hey, I can't do, or I may even maybe feel downgraded. Hospitality is a big deal. Serve team is a big deal. Ushering is a big deal. All of those things are a big deal, necessary. But that this could be another one of my serve teams that I'm connected to, and I get a seat at the table to fund and fuel the kingdom expanding vision that our congregation has. It's just a different approach. It's a way for churches and marketplace leaders to connect. So if you're interested in it, you can hit it up, Kingdom Builders. Just Google Kingdom Builders, and you'll find a lot of resources there. It's been excellent. All right, last 20 minutes or so of this chat, Rachel. This has been so much fun. I'd love to get into Black liberation through the marketplace. Your book in partnership with Marcus Witcher, Hope, Heartbreak, and the Promise of America. And I'm way into the Americans. I was a history major in college, so I'm definitely not an expert in this area. Can't wait to learn with you. I loved your book. But how is both, to start the conversation, in the church, you can kind of use left and right. And obviously in the political space, we use left and right, and it can become kind of pejorative. How is both the left and the right told an incomplete story on this topic of Black liberation in the marketplace, Rachel?
Well, I could answer that question in a number of ways. I think I would start by saying, we can, Ian Rowe has a really great book called Agency, where he talks about blame the victim and blame the system. And these are the two the two sort of polarized ends of the spectrum, right?
Yep.
And what he's saying is, neither of these are quite right. So if I want to blame the system, I can undermine the idea that you can really do amazing things even against obstacles. And so when we look at Black American history, we can see just incredible stories. Madam C.J. Walker, the first female millionaire in the United States, was a Black hair care product entrepreneur. John H. Johnson, the founder of Jet and Ebony magazine. It's just incredible what these people accomplished. They made a huge difference. And so, yes, there's still agency, even when there really is systemic injustice.
Yep.
On the other hand, if we can fall off the horse on the side to blame the victim, where you certainly have struggles in the Black community that are the result of destabilizing policy. And so, oftentimes conservatives will talk about the perverse incentives of the welfare state, which I think is totally correct. So the welfare state undermines family formation. It undermines incentives to work. That's very well documented. Go to benefitscliffs.org if you're confused about that at all. You can find out about it. And there's marriagepenalty.org, right? So you can see how these perverse incentives work. But we often have, we have other sorts of terrible policies. The criticism of which it sort of codes more left, but I'm not sure why. Because they're big federal spending policies. So if we're not into big federal spending projects, like conservatives at least used to not be into, then we should criticize them too, right? So projects like urban renewal, the way that the highways were constructed, cutting through cities, cutting through organic neighborhoods that were really up and coming working class neighborhoods. That was incredibly destructive to the social capital of the people in those areas. And so you have a terrible destabilization. It's always going to affect the most vulnerable population first, which was the Black population at that time. That is the non-proximate cause of certain cultural issues that we see today. So I'm not denying the conservative point that we have issues with fatherlessness and family. That is absolutely true. Those are the proximate causes that have to be addressed today. But there is a historical story to be told about how we got there. And we're now seeing, of course, all of our communities falling prey to those issues. Fatherlessness in the white community is at 30%, which is 5 percentage points higher than Daniel Patrick Moynihan was panicking over in the 1960s in the Black community. In the Hispanic community, it's 50%. So this is really a crisis in the United States. We have the highest fatherlessness rate in the whole world, at least for those who record it. And so we have to address these cultural issues, but there's no reason not to be able to tell that nuanced story about how we got here, as opposed to just saying, look at you, you're failing, right? It's like, well, it's not like the Black community suddenly decided to give up on marriage and family in the late 1960s. They were very, very strong in those areas in the 1950s, as Thomas Sowell points out. This was something that happened in the 60s and 70s. It's not from slavery. It's a later issue. And so, I think we can do both, right? And that's basically what I say in the book is there's no reason that we can't tell a nuanced story here. Yeah. And we can balance the between, right? The blame the victim and the blame the system ends of the pole.
That's so good. Well, the local church should definitely care about fatherlessness and being there for the most vulnerable in our community, the littlest of these. Tell the story from your perspective, especially in the book. How did fatherlessness, especially in the Black community, become such a thing, and how did that impact even other communities? Tell more. And I think you're right, and I don't know, I'm not an expert in this, but that it did come in the 60s and 70s. What was kind of the tipping point? Were there a few different primary reasons that fatherlessness entered in? Just give us a historical understanding of this epidemic, this huge problem.
Yeah, so I think of the phenomena like fatherlessness are all interconnected. The left will want to talk about unemployment, the right will want to talk about family formation, and maybe the Catholics will want to talk about contraception.
Yeah, sure.
Right? Well, actually, these are all part of the story, to tell you the truth. There is something called the contraception shock, which changes the sexual dynamics between men and women, sort of the sexual politics. And the old, hey, if we have sex and I get pregnant, you're going to have to marry me. I hate to put it in those cold terms, but that was certainly part of sort of the game theory, right? The strategic situation that shifted. And that shifted the sexual dynamics. That was huge. There's simply no denying that. You also have, of course, the sexual revolution, right? And so changing ideas. But behind all of that, you have this breakup of community. So I already mentioned highways, urban renewal, the perverse incentives of the welfare state, but you also have the unions. And excuse me, I have some politically incorrect views here, so I'm just putting them forward. You can take them or leave them.
That's fine.
But unions run on the idea that you can have a higher than market wage for your employees. That can only be accomplished by constricting the supply of labor. So one way to do that is to take advantage of any prejudice that anyone might have against certain laborers. And so unions did take advantage of racial prejudice. And so they were able to really exclude Black men from a lot of that middle kind of between manual labor and white collar, right? That blue collar factory labor, a lot of Black men were excluded. And then prices were forced up so quickly. I mean, think about the old deals people had in terms of pensions and early retirement. It was very, very, I guess, lucrative is the way you'd put it. That it really drove those companies offshore and into automation even faster than they otherwise would have. So I don't mean to say that that wouldn't have happened eventually. It absolutely would have. But that really, really high wage price caused that to happen much more quickly. And so what you have is a Black male population that misses out on the transition from manual labor to white collar, right? They miss out on that blue collar transitional piece. And that is very damaging because now you have Black women who white families are comfortable with. And so their nurses and their teachers and their secretaries and their parents are getting them ready for these professions. And Black men are still stuck in manual labor. And so now you've got another hit against your sexual politics, which is really, really hard. All right. And then, of course, just the general hit on the neighborhood and on the community, the fraternal associations, the Black church, right? All of these being broken up by the highways, by urban renewal, et cetera, then helps to sort of have that snowball effect with the family. So I think the breakdown of the family makes it harder for the church, but the breakdown of the church makes it harder for the family, right? It goes back and forth. And so we just see Black Americans struggling the most because they're the most vulnerable. But as I said, then it becomes a snowball effect really throughout our whole entire country.
Yeah. And there's no getting away from the fact that there were and still are in various pockets segregation struggles. And, what's the most segregated hour of the week? It's Sunday morning. Do you talk about segregation and the church and that dynamic much in your classes? Yeah, I'm curious there.
Yeah, this is a really tough one for me because chapter 5 of my book is on the Black church. And oh my goodness, I loved writing that chapter. I mean, it was such a joy to research the way that the Black church started still under slavery, developed really as a separate institution because it had to. And just the pain and joy that everyone brought, that Black Americans brought to their church experience. It's a very raw kind of thing for them. And the incredible self-esteem of the concept of Imago Dei and the sacrifice of Christ for people who were told that they were less than human. I mean, it's really a beautiful, beautiful story. But what that means is that the Black church has been a haven for Black Americans. And it puts us in an awkward position when we talk about integration on Sunday morning, because are we asking Black people to leave their haven to come so that we can have diverse congregation, right? It's this weird. So I go to a multi-ethnic church, but it has Black leadership. And so you don't have that tension of, well, we have a few Black faces, but they're really tokens and we do things, in a white tradition. Right. And so it's a very touchy and I don't think easy thing to solve. I think that when we think about integration in the church, it might make more sense to have partnerships between white and Black churches because, once again, I'm not against multi-ethnic churches. I'm a part of one. Right. But I think they need to be organic according to the neighborhood that they're in. Right. Yes. If they're in integrated neighborhoods where I'm not trying to undermine the Black church or Korean churches or other ethnically specific churches. But I do want us to have sort of a sweet fellowship with one another. And I think that might be a healthier way to go than sort of forcing, a tokenism or something, right. Falling off the horse on the side of trying to force an integration that's not organic.
Well, sociologically, I don't think it works.
Yeah.
We have to respect one another's culture. And I've been in a suburban, but we do a lot of urban ministry. And be who you are with a heart to reach all people, but our congregation should reflect the community that we're in. right?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
we're a 90% Anglo-white community. And so that's about where our congregation is. And do we have a desire? I think you're exactly right to partner with, love, respect, tell the story of multi-ethnic
Mhm.
congregations, a Black community down in Phoenix or a Korean church down there. 100%. Yeah,
Yeah.
we're together. And I think in the early church, as it moved, it crossed the gospel. And this is the audacity of the gospel, right? Is that God loves everyone. How do we know? The cross is proof. And now as you go into these, whether it's into Asia or into India, it's going to look like that
Mhm.
community, but
Right.
it's going to be the truth of who God is. This is where kind of colonialism and liturgy are an interesting conversation, and how in
Mm.
the West we've taken maybe all of our practices, and sometimes those practices are helpful. Other times I think it could create a hierarchy within the church of one guy who understands the way they do it in the West, right?
Mm.
Which
Mm.
is more German for us. It's more Germanic. It's
Mhm.
stoic. It's
Mhm.
reserved. Too much passion. I can be labeled a charismatic because I'm a passionate communicator. I'm not, and I'm a Lutheran, but
Right.
but
Which
regardless,
y'all do sing. Y'all really sing
we still
in the
sing. We
Lutheran
love it. We
church.
loved it.
I mean, booming. It's beautiful.
Well, since you bring up singing, do you know that Martin Luther was one of the primary advocates for congregational singing? That
Mm.
in the West there was chanting, but yeah, he said, "No, we singing is praying twice." And so the congregation, and that impacted obviously churches in the West to the global South and the Middle East. I mean, now congregational singing, no matter what culture you're in, it's going to
Yeah,
sound like that culture. But isn't that's kind of a cool story, isn't it?
it
That
is.
singing, actually sing the Lord a new song. The
Yeah.
heavens declare the glory, to sing the praises of God. Anyway, kind of went on a tangent, but I think we need to be sociologically sensitive, and may our churches look like our communities, and may we build bridges of care and understanding into multi-ethnic communities as well, because we're going to become, and there's a lot of Lutherans that are listening, we're a 98+% white church body. And I
Mhm.
think the data, the largest demographic in the United States is going to be mixed race within the
Yeah.
next couple of decades.
Yeah,
And so
that's right.
hopefully our churches are places where people can come from a variety of different backgrounds and experience the love and care of Christ. And hopefully we're
Mhm.
raising up leaders. We're culturally sensitive to their experience, but we're raising up leaders to reach all different types of people. For the Lutheran movement, the confessional Lutheran movement to continue, that must occur. Concordia Chicago. Let me finish that, and then I want to get into Concordia Chicago and your kind of
Yeah.
mission there. But go ahead, add on to what I just said, Rachel.
I just want to say that one of the things that you'll learn about in the book is the way that actually organic mixing of people was artificially stopped.
Hmm.
You know, FHA redlining and these sorts of federal
Yeah,
policies actually undid things that were organically
not
happening.
not helpful.
Um, Oftentimes side by side, you'd have sort of the street near the factory that was the Polish Roman Catholics, then you have the Irish Catholic, then you have the
Right,
blacks, and then you have and they were right next to each other. They were on
right.
different streets, but they were, and then it was like, no, let's send these people out to the suburbs. Let's keep these people. And so here's what's frustrating is
Hmm.
that as we really do need to be quite intentional to bring those networks back together so
Yes.
that even economic networks can develop that were artificially separated.
Hmm.
And I think that's done an incredible amount of damage. But that can look like we're being artificial. And it's like, no, we're not being artificial. We're undoing the artificial stuff that happened a century ago and that separated us so that we don't have the opportunities for cooperative endeavors that we should.
So for those who don't know, give us just a cliff note of redlining. What is that, and how did that shape America as it relates to segregation?
Yeah, so the Federal Housing Administration was, I believe, probably influenced by the eugenics movement. The eugenics movement, in case people don't know, was hugely popular. It was considered the zenith of social science at the turn of the century. John Maynard Keynes, all of those guys were on the boards of eugenics organizations. John Maynard Keynes wrote a letter to Margaret Sanger, the founder of Planned Parenthood, and said, this is the zenith of modern science. And then he said, now that we've solved the quantity problem, we have to move on to the quality problem.
Wow.
Right. And of course, what
Like,
that was
nothing could be more evil or anti-Christian than
gross.
that, right?
So
Gross,
gross.
anti-human. So
Yeah,
gross. Okay, keep going.
absolutely disgusting. And yet, Woodrow Wilson was a eugenicist. I mean, this stuff, we have Supreme Court justices who were eugenicists. This was completely normal. And it was considered sophisticated, a sophisticated viewpoint to have. And so what that did, I believe, is that it influenced the Federal Housing Administration to say, we need to manage, this is sort of capital P progressivism, we need to manage scientifically the way that people are setting up their neighborhoods. So rather than letting things happen in a kind of emergent order or spontaneous order, they were saying, white people and black people would be better apart. And some of it was immigrants as well, right? It affected all different groups. And what we'll do is we will subsidize the insurance, or we will insure the mortgages of people in pure white neighborhoods. And we will not insure the mortgages of people in black or integrated neighborhoods. And I'm not saying that that was ubiquitous, but it happened quite a bit. And what it did is it drew people out to, white people out to the suburbs, because you're getting new bills out there and you're getting insured by the government. And then everybody else got left behind. And so you have this very weird separation, which was then again subsidized by the highway system, which came in and said, and now you can get anywhere in 10 minutes, right? And then what the highway system did when it was built through municipalities is it was actually built specifically to divide the black part of town from the white part of town. And that was just because the municipal leaders thought, hey, let's get rid of this neighborhood that we don't think is very pretty, and at the same time, we'll keep them on the other side of the concrete wall. It was kind of a natural thing for them to do in the 1950s, considering, the times. And what that meant is that not only were major, Black and Latino neighborhoods destroyed, there's actually still celebrations to this day of the old neighborhoods that got destroyed in Miami and in Minneapolis and various places. But also then the other group is left on the other side of the wall, right? This very huge concrete division between one part of town and the other part of town. And so that's going to destroy all kinds of economic integration. And actually, there are 10 or maybe even 12 by now cities that have moved their highways back to the outskirts of town because they realized their cities weren't walkable. It was really destroying their economic centers. And so it was a very top-down, central planning, scientific kind of progressive mindset that was coming through in all kinds of federal policy.
That's just so disappointing.
It's so disappointing. And here's the worst part. Let me just throw in a little fun fact.
Yeah.
From 1948 to 1966, Black American poverty was cut in half. It dropped from like 80% to 40% of the Black American population. And that was before even the 1964 Civil Rights Act, right? Why? Because they had built up so much social capital, so much literacy. Their fraternal associations were strong. Their churches were strong. Their families were strong. They were riding the post-war economic boom right out of poverty. And right then, right on the cusp of success, you get these terrible policies coming in and undermining that progress. And it really makes you want to cry when you think about it. It really does.
I don't normally get into politics here, but Woodrow Wilson was not a good president. I'm sorry.
One of the worst.
One of the worst. One of the worst. I think whether you're right or left, if you look historically, you should be able to agree on this. I think this is deeply theological. Like, this is so not right, left political. We care about every human being flourishing, their homes and their marketplace, everything. God is a God of abundance, not scarcity. And man, a lot of policies. So this is where you talk victim or system. Like, that is a systemic dysfunction, top down, separating people created in the image of God and radically shaping the way our churches could have been, and hopefully will be in the future, more multi-ethnic, more open to diverse experiences. And I bet just trickle down, this is applying now to we as confessional Lutheranism. Many of our churches, now I've spoken with a number of our Black leaders in our church body, many of our churches fled to the suburban area. And I don't know if flee is the right adjective, but we moved there because a lot of our members, German, European, were there. And a lot of our urban churches that at one time were more diverse, they had to make a choice. And a lot of the urban churches were were left. And that's very unfortunate. We're still actually I'm in the Pacific Southwest district of the Missouri Synod. There are many, many urban churches that are fighting to this day to keep their doors open.
Oh yeah.
And their
We just
only
had one
hope
of
is
our
becoming more like their community rather than what once was. Rachel, anything more to say there?
Yeah, I was just going to say one of our Lutheran Church Missouri Synod urban schools just closed last year, right near Concordia, Chicago, and we were brokenhearted. We tutored there
Yeah.
and helped there, and it was just really hard to keep the doors open financially,
Yeah.
And I think the story that I'm trying to tell, I am a political philosopher, so I can't help but get a little political
No,
here.
it's great. It's great.
But the story that I'm trying to tell is that so much of that was actually the result of incentives that were put into place from at the federal level in a kind of social engineering mindset. And it has damaged us so terribly. And now we're trying to backpedal out, and it's gonna be really hard to recover from what was done in the 20th century.
Yeah. Well, we'll see how all this goes. It's good to know that God's on the throne, and a better day is quickly approaching when He returns to make all things new. Let's close on a high. This has been so much fun. I love the way God made your brain, Rachel. Super fascinating. Tell a good story or two about what God's doing at Concordia Chicago. It's one of the Concordias that I'm less familiar with. I'm a Concordia, Nebraska grad. I've spoken a lot about some of the other Concordias through some good and hard times here of late.
Yeah.
But Concordia Chicago sometimes I feel like is not mentioned as much in the wider Concordia story, and that's unfortunate. So let's talk about Concordia Chicago, Rachel.
Absolutely. Well, I have to sing the praises of our president, Russell Dawn. He was really brought in to make sure that Concordia Chicago was mission aligned. But he also has a background both as a lawyer and in finance, as well as in theology. He has a degree in theology from Oxford. He's really a polymath. But anyway, he's a fantastic, sweet guy. And he came in and made some very hard decisions in terms of cuts and reorganization, got us on a very, very solid path financially, which is a big deal. For those of you who don't know, the population of students is smaller right now than it has ever, than it has been in recent decades. And so a lot of small liberal arts colleges are closing for that reason, as we saw both in Portland and in New York and with the Concordias. So that was he really went through it to get that done. So I just have to sing his praises. He did such a good job. And we're now really hiring for mission. And because of that, we all are beginning to feel that we are rowing in the same direction. It's a very exciting time to be at Concordia, Chicago. It's very entrepreneurial. And I also want to say that Concordia Chicago should get more attention because it is urban.
Yep.
We're on the west side of Chicago, western suburbs, right over the city line. We're right next to Frank Lloyd Wright's first home. Very cool. And our students are working class kids, from the ring around that neighborhood. And, this is a chance to be a place that stands on its beliefs, that keeps tradition alive, in a way that I think could be incredibly attractive to particularly Black and Latino parents. We're majority minority school, who actually are pretty socially conservative a lot of the time, right? And even Catholic students who are coming to us because a lot of the Catholic schools have given in to some of the nonsense that goes on higher ed campuses. And they feel like, hey, I'd love for my kid's campus to be pro-life, but I don't even know if I can believe that that's happening on my Catholic campus, right? I mean, it's shocking, but it's true. And so it's really a haven, I believe, for that. And yet we're right there in Chicago, right? Where you've got access to all of those amazing markets. So it's a really special place. When you think of a lot of conservative schools, they do tend to be sort of rural, And so to be in an urban center like that, I think is a really big deal. It's very exciting. And then Dr. John has really charged me at the Free Enterprise Center with not only, of course, praising the wonders of the market and of our constitutional system, but also putting forward this idea of neighborhood stabilization, which is really effective poverty alleviation that's sensitive to the importance of work and vocation and, market participation as a solution, as opposed to, let me sort of help you survive till next week, but I'm not really transforming your situation in a way that helps you to actually emerge from poverty. So we have to be very self-critical, I think, when it comes to some of the ways that we do help the poor. But it's also very exciting to think about some of the new models that are coming out through groups like True Charity, for instance, which I always refer people to as an example, and we host their trainings on Concordia's campus. And so I feel like that's a special contribution that my Free Enterprise Center can make, as opposed to some of the others that are doing tax policy or whatever else it might be. Very, very appropriate to a Christian campus.
Hey, Dr. Ferguson, this has been amazing. Shout out to Dr. Don, President Don, and all the good work that God is doing there at Concordia Chicago. We have 5 Concordias now across the country, and you and St. Paul, both in kind of more urban areas, are shining lights. And we need all the Concordias, healthy, strong, collaborative, not competitive, right? All building one another up. And the best part about all of our Concordias are, yes, we want our schools to be for Lutheran kids being raised up like myself in a Lutheran context, raising up the next gen of spiritual leaders, pastors and teachers, administrators, etc., DCEs, worship leaders. All of that's great. But our Concordias are also distinct in that we raise up marketplace leaders who carry the love and light of Jesus out into a dark and dying world. And this has been so fun. If people want to connect with you and your work, Rachel, how can they do so?
Very easily. I'm on LinkedIn, Rachel Ferguson. Just Google me with Concordia. Also on X, I am at Liberty Ethics. I'm quite opinionated on X more than on the others. And you can also connect with me on Facebook, of course. And I publish articles quite commonly. I just had one in Christianity Today last week.
Oh, cool.
And so I'll always post those on my social media if you want to follow what I'm saying.
Love that. This is the Tim Ahlman Podcast. Please share this conversation today. And I pray, share it with a marketplace leader who thinks their voice in their work is less significant to the expansion of the kingdom of God. The kingdom of God is advancing. It's not just then and there on that great and glorious last day, but it's advancing in our business community in beautiful ways. And we need one another, from spiritual leaders to marketplace leaders to everyone using their respective vocation to advance the cause of Christ and to carry the character and love and care and concern and honor and respect of Christ, not just in our local churches, but you, baptized believer, you are the church out in the marketplace to bring the love and light of Jesus there. And you've highlighted that in beautiful ways today. Rachel, thank you. It's a good day. Go and make it a great day. You rock, Rachel. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me.